What is going on? What is going on? I hope this video finds you in good health, and I hope you're all having a wonderful evening. As you all know, the Bills had a 38-20 victory over the AFC darlings, Kansas City Chiefs. And man, we may still be slimly in this 24-hour victory window, but we're still in the window, and it still feels just as good as when the horns sound. I have two of the usual suspects joining me tonight. EJ Daniels, first and foremost. EJ, it's always a pleasure. How you doing, man?
Good man, ready to discuss the Bills on this Victory Monday and discuss this great win.
For sure. And Travis Blakesley, it's always a pleasure to go on with you, man. How you doing?
4 hours of sleep never felt so good.
No, it never has. It has never felt so good as on a Victory Monday such as today. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Josh Allen, the man of the hour, and his game against the Kansas City Chiefs and his overall demeanor in this game. The whole demeanor of the football team they felt nasty. It felt like they came out there set to prove themselves and set to prove to the world something that we all weren't aware of, and that the AFC is the Bills to lose. EJ, how did you feel about the Bills last night? What stood out to you? What was it last night that was really a difference maker for you?
The difference was Buffalo's balance. I did the numbers, and Buffalo had a 55.6 and then 44% from a pass run ratio. So this was one of their more balanced games. And then also you look at Josh Allen. I mean, you guys saw the money ball. Josh Allen had a 99.9 PFF grade on throws, 30 plus yards down the field. And that right there was the difference in the game. Allen hit every single one of his deep shots. I believe one was for a touchdown. Then you had that one, the digs that was kind of quirky, but could have also been a touchdown. But Allen was very efficient in the deep passing game. They was efficient in the run game. Even Allen was efficient in the run game. They called those three counter power runs, quarterback runs in the first drive. And as you saw, as they got their running game going very early in this game, they got deep shots off of all that play action, and they split the Kansas City Chiefs wig on play action. And subsequently, you saw how the 32nd ranked defense played up against the best offense in the league, and you saw what it looked like. So it was a great win by the Bills and a great performance by Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, it was really they really did look like the 32nd ranked defense last night, and the Bills were opportunistic when the Bills had the ball in their hands. I thought they did a great job playing complementary football. The rhythm of this game never felt like it was out of sync. Travis, what were your thoughts on how the Bills looked last night beating the Chiefs?
Now, obviously, the quarterback's going to get all the glory, but to me, the story was the defense. Not only were they opportunistic with getting turnovers, they contained Patrick Mahomes. They forced him to throw off balance, which you saw a handful of balls in the dirt. Not only that, but the physicality that this team brought was exciting. By the fourth quarter, didn't look like these Chiefs receivers and running backs wanted to get hit anymore, and it took a toll. You saw some guys go out with injury. You saw that big hit on Kelsey by Jordan Poyer, and they really brought the physicality, which was lacked in last season. So yeah, they put up the points we all knew they could on that poor defense, but for us, and I think the three of us, or the two of us, along with Jeremy, were in the room when we were saying, what do we need to do to beat Kansas City, and have we done enough in the offseason? And I think we got our answer.
Yeah, I mean, that was really kind of, for a lot of Bills fans, for a lot of us that analyze this team and every minute detail about it, it was really about, what are you going to do to beat the Chiefs? What is it that you need to do to betterment your football team in an effort to be better than the team that sent you packing in the conference championship? Because in order to get to the Super Bowl, you have to go through them. And I don't think that doesn't remain still, whether you won this game or not. And if you listen to how the players were approaching this game, they were very businesslike. And I really appreciated that. I really appreciate how the amount of humility in this locker room, because never for a second was it anything aside from what I expected from them. You listen to them coming into the game. Oh, it's just another game. It's just the next opponent on the schedule. They're not making a big deal out of it about the Chiefs. And I felt like they handled this situation the exact way they needed to. They said the right things and they did the right things. They didn't play like it was just another game. They didn't play like it was just the Kansas City Chiefs or just the next team on the schedule. They played with a fire and a passion and specifically, in particular, Josh Allen. I felt like Josh Allen last night, he had the look in his eye that I had not seen in our quarterback's eyes ever. Doesn't matter any point of his career. I did not see the demeanor from Josh Allen that I had seen prior to last night. So, EJ, how did you really feel about Josh Allen last night? How did you think his demeanor and how he approached this game really kind of impacted his play? Because we didn't see that deer in the headlights that we've seen in these other big moments that we've seen in the past. How did you think that really impacted how the quarterback was and how ready he was to face up against the Chiefs last night?
Well, he talked about it during the week, and he talked about how last year, going up to Arrowhead was probably one of the toughest games he played from a crowd noise standpoint. So in actuality, he was kind of already used to this. And then on top of that, you saw a great game plan that was called and that was put together by the coaching staff. And you're finally seeing your quarterback comfortable. Like, he's comfortable in his offense. He's comfortable, calling the plays. He's comfortable running the plays. He's comfortable with the blocking schemes. He's comfortable with everything. So therefore, thus, the crowd noise really isn't a factor. The only persons that can beat himself, Josh Allen, I'm speaking of, is Josh Allen, because everything is culminating right into the right atmosphere at this moment in time. And honestly, Buffalo looked very unstoppable on offense last night, and you saw that. I mean, like I said, this is the most balanced game that they've played all year, and they really couldn't stop. Like the Kansas City Chiefs really couldn't do a thing with Buffalo, and that's probably going to be a reoccurring thing for Buffalo going forward, due to the fact that they can now run the ball and they can now always pass it efficiently, and now they're taking advantage of those deep parts of the field. And then let's not forget, Emmanuel Sanders, his impact on this game too, and how he's just, also, beating people deep and getting open downfield also. And Josh threw that one dart to him for a touchdown. So, his demeanor was different because he is now comfortable in all phases of the game. And this is what it means to have complete command of the offense.
And, the one thing I've really been looking for in the past from this football team, and it's been apparent the first 4 weeks of the season, as Travis, as you know, I mean, we've talked about it every week on this show about how they've really just kind of stepped on people's throats, put their foot on the neck, and just taking care of business, done what they needed to do in all three phases: offense, defense, and special teams. And I don't think last night was any kind of an exception. I thought that the killer instinct that Josh Allen had in his eyes was the complete inverse of what we've seen in the past. He gets that deer in the headlights look, as I had said just before. He kind of has spoke in the past about his pregame jitters and how he just gets himself too hyped up. That wasn't there last night. The quarterback looked composed. The quarterback looked ready. And when the Bills kept putting points up, it looked like he didn't want to do anything aside from put up more. What were your thoughts on the demeanor of the quarterback last night, Travis?
I thought from the onset you could see Josh Allen was on. I mean, I don't know what it's about the bright lights for him, but you go back to the San Francisco game last year. You go back to the New England game in New England. There's just something about, you can see him composed. He's calm and collected, and the drive, so to speak, was the culmination of it all, where we drove down. We said the hell with just running the ball. The two series prior, we kind of got a little conservative, and I'd love to see the coaching staff really go for the throat, throw for the jugular. We knew we needed to continue to score, so it was great to see Allen and the coaching staff, because we know he can do it, and not just through the air, but he was very decisive when he wanted to run the ball.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what this game plan was coming into the game. You look at, as EJ had alluded to, the fact that they looked balanced, the fact that they looked ready. They didn't get afraid of running the ball, whether it was with the quarterback or with the two running backs. And with that, I want to talk about how Zach Moss played in this football game. And while he averaged a little under 4 yards per carry, I thought his biggest contribution was in the passing attack. I thought Zach Moss, out of the backfield, aside from one drop, he had really soft hands. He was really opportunistic whenever he got the ball in his hands. He was able to make defenders miss. He wasn't afraid to run through anybody's face to get the extra yard. I thought he looked absolutely dynamic as a receiving back in ways that we hadn't seen before. I know that I've spoken in the past about how Zach Moss and how efficient he is as a receiver out of the backfield in comparison to his running mate, Devin Singletary. But I think Zach Moss looked exponentially effective out of the backfield last night. EJ, can you touch on how the running back looked for the Bills in your opinion?
Yeah, one of the things that I had in my notes is Josh is finally using his checkdowns, and I think Zach Moss's great play is attributing again to the quarterback Josh Allen for actually giving him the ball. You looked at that one drive. I think Josh threw 3 checkdowns, I believe, and I think 2 of them were to Moss, and one was popped for a 20-yard gain. That's what Moss can do. He can run the ball efficiently. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and then he's a great pass protector also. He played great. He's been playing great for the past, 3 weeks. I mean, we had some doubts coming into the season because he started the year, with an inactive, but then he came back, 2 games, 3 games now, and he's coming. He's looked great. He's looked like the best back on the team. I mean, no disrespect to Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary also has looked solid, but it looks like based on, game flow and snap count, it looks like Zach Moss is that RB1, man, and it's tough to take it away from him. It's tough to take anything away from him at this moment in time.
Yeah, you really can't take anything away from what Zach Moss has been able to do when given his opportunity for touches in games. I think he's looked nothing but angry when he touches the football. He's added that kind of physical dimension to the Bills offense that I wouldn't necessarily say was missing, especially when you have a 6'6", 250-pound running. I'm not going to call Josh Allen a running back, but when they use him as a running back, you're not missing any physicality in that regard by any means. And I think being able to have Zach Moss, have a guy that Josh Allen can turn around and hand the ball off to, and a guy who's not afraid of contact, and he's also, surprisingly shifty and for some defenses, I feel. Travis, how did you feel about Zach Moss last night and what he was able to do?
I feel like Zach Moss is definitely trending in the right direction as far as taking a little bit more of the shoulder in the run game. He overall is a better running back, in my opinion, than Singletary, and that's no knock on Singletary. He's a more natural catcher of the football. He's a much better blocker, especially, when he's side by side with Allen. And, he had that one drop, but he made up for it. He had a couple nice hard runs, and then that one big catch over the middle where the linebackers they vacated the area, and he had a big gain. As long as he can hold on to the football, I know both those guys had a little bit of an issue. And I do think that it was kind of a message sent, because when you hear McDermott say we're living dangerously with the fumbles, I think that's directly calling out Motor. But Moss, he's the kind of guy that I like to compliment Allen. I think they have a good rapport. The same goes with he has that kind of connection that him and Knox have. So I like to see him on the field, and I like to see Singletary as a change of pace back, as you would.
And see, that's the thing. Like, it's all about, what role you put each of them in. And like you just said, Trav, like Devin Singletary is more suited for that change of pace role. That's not to say that he couldn't carry the load if called upon. But right now, Zach Moss looks like the RB1. He's carrying the load. They're giving him the touches. They're giving him the targets. And he's doing everything with him. I mean, he was a 3rd-round draft pick, I believe, just like Devin Singletary, And Devin Singletary had a chance to, get his stranglehold on the job, and he didn't. We thought he was going to be the RB1 coming into the season, but I mean, it just seems like the coaching staff loves Moss. And once again, I'll sit here and say that I'm wrong, and that the coaching staff knows what's best. And Zach Moss is the guy who's getting all the carries, and subsequently you see, the fruits of that's on display on the field.
Yeah, this offense, the amount of physicality that they kind of gain with just Zach Moss's presence, I feel like every time he touches the ball, there's a something there. It feels like he's going somewhere with that football, and he's always going to get positive yardage anytime he gets a touch. And the amount of value that adds to a backfield of any type of any offense, that is insurmountable. That is really important for any offense. And towards the end of Travis's point, he kind of alluded to Dawson Knox. And we saw it again this week. Dawson Knox became the first Bills tight end in franchise history to have 4 touchdowns in 4 consecutive games. That is, when you go back in time and you look at how bad the Bills tight end position really has been over the history of the team's existence, it's kind of alarming as to how little production it takes. I'm not dismissing what Dawson Knox has done to this point or trying to make it sound minute in any way, but you really go back and you see how bad the Bills have been at tight end historically. and you look at this season and what Dawson Knox has put together thus far, EJ, we were talking behind the scenes. You said that you can't really put it in a vacuum and say Dawson Knox is the best tight end in the league, but you can make an argument that he is one of the best tight ends in the league right now this season in 2021. How do you feel about Knox and how he's played thus far, including last night?
So I was one of the biggest critics of Dawson Knox, and I will sit here and take my L proudly. And I tweeted out last night that I may be on my way to the Dawson Knox fan club because that's how well he's playing. My opinion changes when the facts change. And the fact is he has not dropped a pass. I believe he leads the NFL in touchdown catches. And thus, he is probably through 5 games, you can make a case that he is better than Kelsey and Kittle, who's also on IR. But you can make a case that he is the best tight end in the league right now. He's making those contested catches. He's making those catches in the red zone. There is literally nothing you can nitpick at this man's game right now. And if he continues to go the way he's going, as you see, to take the point a step further, we're seeing a lot less of Cole Beasley because of the emergence of Dawson Knox. So hopefully we still see this. And when we get those 4 wide packages with trips on one side, we'll get that big slot in the slot inside receiver. And then that'll open up another dimension for this Bills offense too.
Yeah, and really Knox's inclusion and his ability to be included, what he's been able to do whenever he's targeted. Just we've talked about the kind of chemistry that's been apparent over the last 11 or 12 games for Josh Allen and the Bills tight end. I think Dawson Knox has done nothing but prove himself this season. He's always been a hard worker. He's always been in the right spots. He's always been an athlete, but he's never been a mismatch for the Bills the way he has been this season. Travis, what are your thoughts on the Bills tight end and what he's been able to do and how much he really just kind of changes the complexity of the Bills offense?
Well, to start, he's the first actual red zone threat the Bills have had in the Sean McDermott era. We've always been looking at out wide, looking for that big, tall wide receiver who can get open and can make contested catches in the red zone or in the end zone down when we get down there. And throw in the fact that he has such a great rapport with Allen, you can run those type of RPOs that we saw earlier in the season and late last season where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You have Allen booting and then you see Knox slip outside and it's a touchdown either way. And then you add in the fact that this guy is a solid blocker. He's a hell of an athlete. And then you see him making ridiculous off-script plays like we saw last night. It's really coming together. I know there's been a lot of hate and a lot of it warranted. I mean, I think there wasn't enough recency biasy the last year or so, the full actual 16 games he's played, because he's been very good the last actual 16 games. People just kind of held on to that rookie season and early 2020 season, but what he's been able to put together thus far, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there who said just give him time, give him time. I like to kind of compare him to the Josh Allen of tight ends. He didn't have the snaps at the position to really, develop into what we see today. So it's great we kind of get rewarded for the patience that we've had. And like EJ mentioned before, sometimes the coaching staff knows best.
Yeah. And, when really talking about Dawson Knox and what he's EJ, were you saying something? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying, and to Travis's point, I had said at the end of the year, you remember he actually played well towards the end of the year. He has career 9 drops, and last year he had 4 drops, and so he's been sequentially cutting his drops. And towards the end of the year, he had been playing well. But only thing I kept saying is that Bills Mafia and the people who were talking about Dawson Knox were acting like as if the drops wasn't an issue for him, and it had been an issue for him. His thing was he would make tough catches, but wouldn't make, the simple ones that would, move the chains, and even, Bills beat reporter Matt Perino echoed some of the same sentence when I asked him the question about Dawson Knox. He was saying that you couldn't do that. But like I said, it's great to see him now coming in. He's like Travis said, he's taking what he did last year and he's building upon it. He got that hand-eye coordination coach that he was working out in California, got that coach, got his hands right, got his eyes right, because has a lot to do with how you catch the football, and you're seeing the fruits of that. He statistically is probably the best tight end in the league right now, and you love to see it.
Yeah, and you really love to see it on this Bills offense that already has a litany of options as to how they can attack a defense, right at their disposal. I think what Dawson Knox has brought to this offense cannot be understated. I think the amount of trust that we see, I think it was kind of difficult for me to say how much trust Josh Allen had in Dawson Knox in weeks past. I mean, you've seen instances like the back shoulder throw that he threw to him against I believe it against the Washington football team.
Washington.
Yep. You saw it in that play. You've seen it in his targets in the red zone, how Allen sometimes looks for him in the mismatch that Dawson Knox could have on the field. But I think last night was really, I think that's a true testament to the amount of trust that you've seen these two build with one another. Allen looked for him twice on occasions on third down. And on one of them, I wouldn't even call it a jump ball, but that was the way that Dawson Knox had played it to kind of manipulate the corner into thinking wherever the ball was going wasn't where it was going, so he could make the play on it, and he couldn't. And he also made a third down catch on the first drive of the game for the Bills. And I think when you see Josh Allen looking for Knox in those kind of situations, that's where I can really credit the amount of trust that Allen has building with him. You can never dispute the relationship that those two have had, the connection that they have had off the field. It's been apparent ever since they've come to Buffalo, really. Those two have had a connection. They've been friends for a while. And it's really good to see, the kind of the fruits of that come to a culmination on the field for in between the lines, if you will, to see these two kind of get on that spectrum the way that they have this season. And it has done nothing but wonders for this offense that was already multidimensional and had many guys that could catch the ball. And let's talk about another one here, because I think he had an excellent game last night. And, this is kind of just the latest example as to how big of an improvement the Bills made to their wide receiver core when they added veteran wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders. Travis, I thought Emmanuel Sanders was a real mismatch last night. I thought the way that the Kansas City depth chart lined up against him was going to be kind of suspect, and he was going to have opportunities, and he made the most of them last night.
Yeah, he's really just proven to be everything John Brown wasn't. Let's be honest. He's a three-phase wide receiver. He's got great hands. He has that savvy veteran IQ. He finds the holes in the zones. He's still able to beat guys man to man. And, it helps when you have a quarterback who puts it on the money. I mean, those two throws, those touchdown throws, he just had to stand there and stick his hands up, and they were wonderful to see. But to hear him in the press conferences, to say what he's saying about Allen, because, he doesn't need to say any of that stuff. I think he truly believes it. And when you get a guy at his age coming in here, all he's looking for is to get another Lombardi trophy. So to have another threat outside of Diggs, and then the emergence of Dawson Knox, like we said, this is a formidable receiving core. And, over the last 3 weeks, you see the relationship on the field just blossom between him and Allen. He was his go-to guy last night. You could argue Knox as well. He did spread the ball around, but when it mattered most, he was in the end zone, and he's not letting us down. It goes to show why Brandon Beane has been on his trail to try to get him on his team for so long.
And to Travis's point about the upgrade of Emmanuel Sanders over John Brown, I actually sat and thought, so what's the biggest difference between John Brown and Emmanuel Sanders? So we all know that John Brown is straight line fast, and I remember Mookie Hawkins was telling me, he said, go back and watch the film. He said John Brown can never get open on third down. And so I went back and watched, and he was correct. Like, he can never get open. But to see, the thing with Emmanuel Sanders is, while John Brown and Emmanuel Sanders both can run routes, Emmanuel Sanders can maintain that speed that he has throughout all his routes. And that's where that veteran savvy comes from. That's where it comes from, being a great detailed route runner. He ran a double move yesterday and maintained that same speed throughout the whole route. I think that's the biggest difference between him and John Brown. John Brown is straight line fast, but Emmanuel Sanders can maintain that straight line speed, that foot speed throughout the whole route, double moves, whatever the case may be. And you see that double move he ran and to get a touchdown. And then, like you said, Trav, on top of having a quarterback that has improved his deep ball accuracy, leaps and bounds, went from the worst deep ball passer the last 3 years to the best last year. Couple with those two things and the fact you have sweet symphony, sweet harmony when it comes to the deep ball and when it comes to Emmanuel Sanders' impact on his offense.
Yeah, I think the value that Emmanuel Sanders brings to this football team cannot be overstated. In fact, I thought it was quite understated in the offseason when the Bills brought this guy on a board. A lot of people were questioning why the Bills would bring a guy on like Emmanuel Sanders, what he really had to offer in this stage of his career. And I think that can all be put to bed. I think that was put to bed a couple weeks ago. I think that, Emmanuel Sanders' value speaks for itself at this point. And, Emmanuel Sanders, I thought the most impressive thing, the 2 touchdown catches were impressive in itself, obviously. What he's able to bring onto the field in the aspect of X, Y, and Z, and what he does for the Bills offense has tremendous value. And that's why he's on the football team, and that's why he's currently the number 2 wide receiver. But I think, watching last night's press conference, seeing his demeanor, this is just a guy that, and I don't think there's many people in the Bills locker room that you can really appraise this to. He's a guy who's been there before. He's a guy who's won these games before. He's a guy who's played teams, the Chiefs of the past, if you will, the powerhouses of the past. He's been there in big moments, in big games, countless times, time after time. Emmanuel Sanders has had to make plays in big stages, in big games, with big-time players guarding him. That is a matter of fact. And when I hear a football team say, "Oh, it's just the Chiefs. It's the next game. This game, this isn't necessarily a monkey off our backs. This isn't necessarily a hurdle that we have gotten past." When I hear those sort of things, I tend to believe it when I hear it from somebody such as Emmanuel Sanders. And I think the value that he adds to the Bills' offensive meeting room, that kind of demeanor, that experience, that is invaluable in itself. I think that amount of confidence that he carries himself with, that is as infectious as anything that a veteran football player can have. And it's evident. I think the sky is the limit for Emmanuel Sanders. And I think, this isn't any kind of slight on John Brown, but, what the Bills are able to do with that chess piece in their pocket, it's quite exciting. And I think everybody should not sleep on Emmanuel Sanders. He is the mismatch for this Bills offensive passing attack whenever you're facing up against any of these big-time opponents. With the inclusion of Emmanuel Sanders, I kind of want to talk to both of you about this because EJ had kind of alluded to it when talking about how Dawson Knox is being implemented into this offense and what kind of effect the implementation of Dawson Knox and Emmanuel Sanders as well, what kind of effect that's really having on Cole Beasley and his targets and what he's able to kind of contribute to the offense. Travis, what did you think about Cole Beasley and his lack of inclusion in the game last night? Do you think this is more so a matchup thing and you'll see Beasley get a ton of targets some weeks, such as against Washington, and then have little to none, such as this game last night where I believe he only had 1 or 2? What do you think the real impact of this has on the Bills offense? And do you think it could potentially create a rift in the locker room?
Well, we're certainly going to find out. As Coach McDermott alluded to, he said this was completely game plan and it had nothing to do with the I don't know how he put it, the lack of trust in Beasley. But he also said that about Cody Ford. So that remains to be seen. And with the breakout of Dawson Knox, I mean, he's eating up those reps. So if you look at his rep count, it's been on a slow decline since that one big game that he had. I think his first game of the season, he was in the 90%, and it's been down since then. Now, we did have that one breakout game, and I do think we'll see games where a lot of underneath throws are the focal point. We'll see Cole Beasley more involved, but it's certainly, you talk about him deleting his Twitter or deactivating it, whatever. I don't like to get into that kind of stuff, but we're going to find out. And at the very least, we can operate without him. I'm a big fan of Beasley on the field for sure. I like what he brings to the table, but we're doing fine with him not receiving that many targets. So it's going to be interesting to see as we go forward.
It's just funny, like you said, that same line he used for Cody Ford, he used for Cole Beasley, and we haven't seen
verbatim.
Right, and we haven't seen Cody Ford on the field since. You know what I mean? So that's very telling. Sean McDermott is one of those coaches who irritates me because he's not passive aggressive, but he won't actually answer the question straight. But you know what he means. Like, we probably not gonna see Cole Beasley like we saw him before. And to answer Clayton's question specifically, I think it's very telling that the slot wide receiver who has created the most separation in the past 3 years, has the most catches out of the slot in the past 3 years, is not being implemented in the game plan. Like, that speaks volumes to me. But a lot of this is on himself. You know, he got into all the vaccine talk and all that, like you said, all that stuff on Twitter. And Dawson Knox was working, and now Dawson Knox is adding another dimension, you know, to this offense. You ask how. Now look at Emmanuel Sanders, deep threat. Look at Stephon Diggs. We know what he can do, dominate at all levels of the field. And then now you got Dawson Knox, if you remember, who is also adding another deep threat element to this offense. So now you got 3 guys on a given play in a 3-wide set or whatever the case may be, who all can get down the field and dominate down in those 20 plus, 30 plus yard areas of the field. Cole Beasley can't do that. I love Cole Beasley. He has created the most separation out of the slot in the past 3 years. But they are a more dynamic offense, as you seen last night, when Dawson Knox is in there more and Josh can target all 3 of his receivers down the football field and in those plus areas of the field. He targeted Knox, he targeted Diggs, and he targeted Emmanuel Sanders, all 20 plus yards down the field. So keep that in mind as we go forward and the Bills play these better teams.
And we haven't even mentioned Gabe Davis, who does similar things, as you said. You know, he's still in the stable.
You know, I kind of, you know, as you mentioned, Gabe Davis, this kind of goes to my point. I really hope that this Bills offense can just be a spoil of riches. That's really what it is. You talk about a receiving depth chart that's 4 receivers deep. 2 of the guys can play any position on the offensive receiving room. And then you have a guy like Cole Beasley, who is as effective from the slot as any receiver in the NFL. And you combine that with the fact that Dawson Knox's talent is finally coming to fruition and his potential is finally coming to fruition, and he's becoming a real factor for this Bills offense that defenses have to account for every single week. And you factor in the fact that the Bills rushing attack has also bettered itself from last season. You know, this is a really scary offense. But in regards to Cole Beasley and his involvement or lack thereof, I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with his personal standing in the locker room. At least I hope not. I hope it doesn't have anything to do with his antics. I hope it doesn't have anything to do with him running his mouth on Twitter. And that's really what I've kind of dissolved it to at this point, is him running his mouth. It's him, you know, you can say or believe whatever you will. But when you talk about a football team that, you know, the biggest trait that this team has that a lot of other teams don't is the togetherness. It is the culture. It is what this team, you know, it really kind of is the identity of this football team. You know, their ability to get along as well as they do, their ability to have synergy in their room, the camaraderie throughout their room. It's exactly everything that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have been preaching since they stepped foot in Buffalo, however many years ago. And when you see a player coming out publicly and being actively trying to cause problems amongst the locker room, actively, you know, essentially just making bigger problems than they need to be at that point in time. I feel like when, you know, we're leading up to what is the biggest game of the Bills season to this point, and a team that bounced them out of the playoffs last year, nobody wants to talk about the vaccine. Nobody wants to talk about those things in that regard. Nobody really wants to hear about it. I really don't. I don't think anybody in that locker room really does either, especially when they're the ones getting ready for the football game. And to see that he has deactivated his Twitter, that is nothing but good news to me. That is a sign to me that he is going off the rails. That isn't a sign to me that he's pissed off and he's just saying F it and throwing his phone down and deactivating his account because so-and-so said so. I hope he did that out of his own power. I hope nobody said a word to him about deactivating his Twitter, and he took the accountability and the responsibility to just say, you know what, there's bigger things at play here, and I'm just going to shut my mouth. I really hope that's what it was. And I'm not really a person who cares one way or another what he has to say. I think these guys should be able to say whatever they need to say about anything. That's the freedom we all have. That's the freedom we are all entitled to. But at the end of the day, what is important right now? What is important is this team getting along and this team striding their way to a Super Bowl. And you see what they did last night. They did nothing but get closer to that. And I think the biggest thing that makes this team as threatening of a Super Bowl contender as they are, and that's what they are. They are the team to beat now in their conference. After they take down the Chiefs, they are that team. And I don't think there's any debate right now that the Bills are one of the best teams in football, if not the best team in football. And I think that can mainly be accredited to their defense. The amount of growth that they've made on that side of the ball, the amount of growth that they made in the trenches. Travis, you briefly touched on it at the onset of the show. What was your thought of how, the Bills defense just worked in complementary form last night against the Chiefs?
Well, let's start by bringing up the team that they're playing. This is a team in the Kansas City Chiefs that is scoring touchdowns at 80% in the red zone. 51% of their drives they're scoring touchdowns on prior to this game. And last night, the Chiefs were 2 of 5 in the red zone. They got 4 turnovers, only 1 completion over 20 yards, 2 touchdowns on 11 drives. Like I said, they were scoring 51% prior to the game. So this is a offensive juggernaut that was stymied. This was the game plan and the sort of execution that we all knew we needed to see if we were going to be successful. So for them to go out there, add the physicality, every time somebody touched that ball who was in red, they got hit. They did not move the pile forward. They got driven back. So the execution was phenomenal. The game plan was phenomenal. Let's give Leslie Frazier some credit here. This is 2 teams that, maybe he didn't build this game plan or the play card to defeat the Chiefs, but he did it for the Ravens. And you can argue that Tampa Bay did it for Kansas City in the Super Bowl. But I believe that Frazier really took it to another level because, let's face it, the number 1 player on this defense was not playing, and it didn't miss a beat. These guys fill in and they step up. So you got the best safety tandems in the league, really disguising coverages, rolling over the top. Tyreek Hill was frustrated all week or all game long. It was just a culmination of all 3 phases working together, and it shows. I mean, 20 points. I think they were saying this was like the least amount, the biggest differential in points in the Mahomes era. So hats off to Leslie Frazier for coming up with the game plan, and hats off to everyone on that defense for executing.
I will disagree with you, Travis, and say that Micah Hyde is the best player on his defense right now. I mean, he came in to the game.
What does your PFF say?
That he's the second. He's the second highest graded safety coming into the game, or third highest graded safety.
What about Milano?
Milano he was the highest graded linebacker in the league.
All right, so it's a push.
Statistically, I'll agree with you. He's the best player, but I think in terms of impact, I think Micah Hyde is. I mean, clearly he was the one who had the pick 6. He also came in with the 3rd best coverage grade among safeties. He's also coming in now. He ends the week leading the league in picks now. Like you're seeing guys on this defense, and I was telling Clayton this off air. You're seeing a bunch of guys on this defense who are having career years or either breaking out all at the same time. Like I said, we just mentioned Micah Hyde. And then you got Taron Johnson, who ended the game with the best coverage grade in the slot of this game. He also, while also having the most coverage snaps in the league out of the slot, he also has the 3rd most targets out of the slot and has not given up a touchdown. And he was tried in this game. He had 11 targets in this game, and he still did not give up a touchdown. I have been one of the biggest critics of Taron Johnson, and he has responded after getting a new contract on top of that too. So he's playing well. He's having a career year. And then you got, Jordan Poyer, who's also playing great, and he's top 5 in pass breakups among safety. Like, you're seeing many guys who are having monumental impacts on his defense. That's why you're seeing the 2 shutouts. And last, and certainly not least, Ed Oliver. I wrote an article before the season talking about how Ed Oliver needed to be one of the guys who was the best player, one of the best players on his defense. He went from the 6th worst interior run defender, among interior linemen, to now being 16th. He just had to be average, and now he is better than average. And you're seeing the fruits of that when he stops Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the backfield to put them behind and down in distance. You're seeing all this stuff culminate together to them beating the Chiefs, on top of them being the third best coverage unit in the league, and they held probably one of the best offenses in the NFL to 20 points, and that's what we're seeing, and it's great to see.
I don't have enough good things to say about Taron Johnson at this point in time.
Yeah.
I really don't. You look at what he really kind of came from last year, where he was. I talked about it all offseason. I was a huge advocate that Taron Johnson was not the nickel corner of the future, of now or never for the Buffalo Bills. I didn't think he should have anything to do with the Bills secondary and their long-term plans. I thought that he was the biggest liability back there out of all of the defensive backs. And that was really true. You look at how teams targeted him, you look at what particular players he was targeted by, you look at just what he gave up in those pure situations. It was not good for Taron Johnson. And you look at how he's played in the first 4 games of the season coming into this one, he has been an animal. I mean, he missed time. He missed game 4. So let me correct myself. The first 3 games of the year, he looked absolutely on fire in coverage, playing forward. He was a complete football player that he wasn't in 2020. And I think that has had a lot to do with the improvement of the Bills defense. You look at what he was able to do last night. You look at how he was able to impact the game. He was running step for step with Tyreek Hill for a large portion of that game last night. And as we were talking about behind the scenes, when Mahomes can't really connect with Tyreek Hill, there seems to be problems. The synergy of that offense seems to be fractured, if you will, when Tyreek Hill's involvement is diminished or limited to an extent. Travis, how did you think about what do you really think about Taron Johnson, his extension, and what it really means for the Bills going forward in this defense? Do you think do you expect more of the same as to what we've seen at the early portion of this season from Taron over his extension?
Well, I was on record saying I didn't believe the nickel corner next year was on this roster, and it could have kind of went either way. Either he played himself out of a contract because I didn't think we were going to pay him, or he just wasn't going to cut it. And, if I had to guess, week 1, that's what I thought would happen. So I'll eat the crow on that one for sure. Taron Johnson is playing the linchpin of this defense, and he's playing it at an elite level. I was super surprised that they offered the extension this early, but if this guy can stay healthy, I mean, it'll prove to be a huge boon. He's one of the highest paid nickel corners in the league. And there was a number of times where Mahomes looked Tyreek Hill's way and Taron Johnson was right in his hip pocket. And, you got Micah Hyde over the top, but there was many times where he hesitated. He wasn't able to unleash that ball. And most of the times it led to an errant pass or a bad decision on Mahomes' part. So Taron Johnson needs to stay healthy. I think he's really coming together as a complete player. Like you said, we always knew he had a nose for the football when he was tackling. He turned his season around last year with those 2 big pick sixes, and he really hasn't done anything to take a step back. So if this man can stay healthy and, treat his body right. I know he mentioned about how he was trying to take care of his body better. Let's hope it all comes together, because we know how important it is to have a shutdown nickel when you're running this type of defense, 80, 90% of the time. And Leroy mentioned, I know it's not Taron Johnson, but shout out to the rotation with Klein and Neal. I thought that was pretty savvy, bringing Neal in on 3rd downs, and he was just kind of mugging Kelsey most of the game, whether he got away with it or not.
And I that was kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about in regards to the Bills defense and their performance last night, because it's really, when you go back to the AFC Championship and you look at how Travis Kelce really kind of just took over the game, really dictated a lot in that football game, and was the mismatch that really kind of put the Chiefs passing attack over the edge. I thought the plan of attack last night for Travis Kelce was absolutely perfect. The jamming at the line of scrimmage, the nonstop contact throughout the entire route, throughout the entire game. it obviously had a residual effect on him throughout 4 quarters. And, he clearly he had a couple of receptions in the game. He had a couple of targets. It's not like the Bills absolutely took him out of the game. But, for Travis Kelce and what he really brings to that offense and, the amount of involvement that he really has on a week-to-week basis, it was obviously one of his lesser weeks. And the Bills definitely made that a focal point in their defensive game plan to be physical with Travis Kelce. Whether you can credit that to A.J. Klein, you can credit that to Saran Neal, you can credit to Tre'Davious White, and as well as Tremaine Edmonds. I think a lot of different hands had their hand in the pot last night in defending Travis Kelce and what the Bills were able to do on the defensive side of the ball with Travis Kelce. EJ, what were your thoughts on how the Bills attacked the premier tight end?
I love it. I mean, that's the game plan. You got to be physical with these guys at the line of scrimmage. That is always the difference between a good wide receiver, great wide receiver, or in this case, a tight end. But you got to be physical with them. You have to knock off this timing and the rhythm of their offense because they operate on West Coast principles, which is all based off rhythm and timing and, 3-step drops. And you have to be here at this moment in time. When you disrupt that rhythm and timing, you get the results of what you had. And like I mentioned before, the Bills had the 3rd best coverage unit, in the league. And so on top of that, they're not letting Tyreek, he's the one person on this offense, who scares teams the most because he can take advantage, literally take the top off the defense by himself. And then on top of that, you got an all-pro tight end just working all those intermediate middle parts of the field. But when you have a slot corner like Taron Johnson, who has been playing out of his mind, and you got Saran Neal, like you said, Travis, who came in and roughed him up a little bit, it frustrated him. So much so to the point where they were consistently arguing calls. I felt like Kansas City was arguing way too much with the refs and really just trying to, get calls instead of playing the game. And like you said, Buffalo came out and punched them in the mouth. And Travis and their physicality with Travis Kelce was a big part of that. So I would love to see going forward, when the next time they play Kansas City, what they do again, to combat that, or how Kansas City is going to move next time they play Buffalo. But again, before we move off to the next subject, I do not want to miss giving some love to Groot, man. What he's done, what his impact on this game, and how he disrupted, what the Kansas City Chiefs like to do. They've run the most RPOs in the past 2-3 years. And you saw his interception. They tried to run an RPO to his side, and he intercepted that thing. And that is exactly what he was brought there to do. That is exactly what he was supposed to do. It was perfect. That's good coaching. So I just wanted to show Groot some love before we move on.
Absolutely. I mean, we need to show that entire defensive front some love. I thought that they did an outstanding job against the Chiefs this week. I thought they maintained their lanes. I'm not going to sit here and say that Patrick Mahomes was pressured throughout the entire night because he really wasn't. But they did a really good job of having collective pressure. Everybody collapsing the pocket altogether. Everybody staying in their lanes and doing their jobs on that defensive front. There was a few lapses early in the game. I felt like Jerry was crashing inside from time to time. As Travis, when I pass the mic to you, I'm sure you're going to cover that a little bit because we were talking about it last night. That was a big problem because there was 2 or 3 occasions on 3rd down that Jerry Hughes collapsed the pocket. Well, not necessarily collapsed the pocket, but crashed inside. And that left a huge lane to the outside of the defense for Patrick Mahomes to escape to. And he escaped to it and got the 1st down in critical situations. That can't happen. You can't do that against the Chiefs. And that's really that's the epitome as to why the Bills invested so highly in their pass rush this offseason. That's the epitome as to why you saw them bring in players such as Groot, why they brought in a player such as Carlos Basham, who I thought had an excellent game last night. He did a great job maintaining his gap. And I don't think enough can be said about Star Lotulelei. I don't think I think this season and what he's been able to do since returning from being absent from opting out of COVID, I think ever since he has returned, you've seen a rejuvenated Star Lotulelei. I think you've seen a completely different football player that you could only really compare to the football player we saw coming out of Utah when he was a draft prospect. And you look at what kind of impact he has on that defensive line. Well, look at what kind of impact Ed Oliver has been able to make this year. And by my goodness, has Ed Oliver looked explosive. He has looked like an X factor on that Bills defensive line, a mismatch. And you talk about and you think about what Star Lotulelei really does for the Bills' defensive front. And he really sets up those one-on-one matchups. He sets up Epinesa and Groot on the outside to have one-on-one matchups. He sets up Oliver on the interior to have a one-on-one matchup. And these guys are taking advantage of it. I think the ability to collectively collapse that pocket and, that kind of being in sync with the defensive backfield, also running with their receivers the way they were able to last night, being able to stick with those guys, understanding that the plays are going to be extended and the plays are going to go beyond, the construct of the play. That played such a big part into Buffalo's back pocket and what they were able to do to kind of contain this offense. I think that this Bills defensive line, my hat goes off to them every single week, and this week is no exception. Travis, what were your thoughts on how that defensive front was able to kind of dictate the line of scrimmage and dictate what the Chiefs were able to do and not able to do?
So with the offseason acquisitions, I think it was clear that there was a change in philosophy with how the defensive front was going to get pressure, mainly from the outside, but overall altogether. They were looking to get these long, strong, compressing type defensive ends, meaning you want to squeeze the pocket, not necessarily loop around. Everyone's on board. Unfortunately, like you mentioned, Jerry Hughes seems to just be doing what Jerry Hughes does. He loops around a lot. He gets pressure, but unfortunately, if he doesn't get to the quarterback, he leaves not only a running lane, but he leaves a passing lane. And we saw many third down completions, or conversions, whether it was on the ground or through the air. And Mario Addison, to an extent, was doing that. But if you notice, towards the latter half of that game, Mario Addison got with the program, and that one play where he was when Mahomes was holding the ball for some ridiculous time, like 8 seconds, Addison just stopped there and stood his ground and said, "You're not leaving this pocket." And I think that's exactly what the key to all the inaccuracy that Mahomes was dealing with. He wasn't necessarily pressured. He wasn't getting beat up. He was uncomfortable because the pocket was shrinking and he had nowhere to go with the ball. He wasn't setting up his passes in a way where he was able to gain his footing and deliver the ball accurately. He was throwing off platform. And if you're doing that 30 times a game, the ball's going to be in the dirt a half a dozen times like it was last night. So I really think that overall the defensive line played a big part, especially if you know what you're looking at. It may not show up on the stat sheets, only 2 sacks, but they're all playing, the Obata showed up. Like you said, Star Lotulelei. If you're going to double him, Ed Oliver is going to eat. If you're going to double Ed Oliver, Lotulelei has shown the rejuvenation that he's getting pressure. He's making plays. So overall, it's exactly and Zimmer right there. I mean, that guy had 2 late pressures that really made a big difference in the game. So overall, the strategy to go with this type of pass rush and invest this type of draft capital and money into the defensive line has proven to be exactly what the Bills needed to be on top of the AFC.
Yeah. And that defensive line, they've really dictated things up front. And that value, that is invaluable to this football team because that's exactly what they weren't able to do last year. And at many points in times, that shot the Bills in the foot. That really hurt the Bills. And in this matchup in particular against the Kansas City Chiefs, that really hurt the Bills. As you saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire run wild last year in Buffalo and did whatever he wanted to. And the Bills sold out to stop the run in the AFC Championship. And that really just kind of opened the book up for Patrick Mahomes and company to do what they wanted through the air. There was really no way for the Bills to effectively defend this offense last year, whereas now with the apparent defensive front that they have in place, there is a way for the Bills to defend anybody in the National Football League with that defensive line. And I think as long as they are as long as they are creating problems, creating havoc in the backfield for opposing offenses, I think this Bills defense is legit. There was a lot of talk as to who the Bills played and who they didn't play in the first month of the season leading up to this game. I thought it was nothing but smoke because you look at what the Bills have done just for, just for namesake, just for talking's sake, shutting out 2 teams in the first 4 weeks of the season. Okay, that has never been done since the 2000 Ravens, and before that, the 91 Washington Redskins at that time. And, you look at what the Ravens did that year. They also played two backup quarterbacks in those matchups that they had, that they shut the other team out. And we remember the Ravens as one of the best defenses of all time from that year, having star players on that defense from front to back. And, we don't really sit here and say he and haw over who they shut out or who they didn't shut out, but they were a damn good football team. And when it was time to strap up and play some ball, they came out and strapped up and played some ball. And last night, that's exactly what the Buffalo Bills did. That's exactly what they did from front to back on that defense. And they played in unison. They played I thought the defense played excellent against the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought their game plan for Patrick Mahomes and that rushing attack was perfect. And you're right, Travis, when you said at the onset, the amount of credit that we can give to the Bills defensive coordinator and Leslie Frazier cannot go understated. That cannot be undermined, because what this team was able to do, how they were able to do it, I really wasn't surprised. This was not surprising to me. Their plan of attack against the Chiefs, I thought they did what they needed to do at every level of the defense. And I think the one level in particular that we really need to talk about is the second level with the Bills middle linebacker, Tremaine Edmunds. I thought last night Tremaine Edmunds showed the anticipation, the reading, and the instincts that we have really been kind of missing from him. What he was able to do in coverage, what he was able to do in reading the lanes in run defense. I thought Tremaine Edmunds had a really, really good game last night, and he had a lot to do with why the Bills defense were able to hold this high-powered offense to just 20 points. Travis, can you touch on Tremaine Edmunds and how you felt his performance was last night against the Chiefs for me?
Well, the Bills are going to have to back up the Brinks trucks because the man's going to get paid. He's a savage, no pun intended. I mean, sideline to sideline, he's not thinking. He's reacting. He knows where he's supposed to be, and he's initiating the contact. He's smothering these guys. You're not seeing those missed tackles that we saw last year. You're not seeing blown coverage, blown assignments. He's putting it all together. And I mean, we kind of sound like a broken record because we're just drooling over all these guys, but it's deserved. And Tremaine Edmunds is the leader of this defense. Everybody on that team respects him. He's young. He's hungry. He's going to be here for a long time. The fifth-year option was no fluke. The minute you offer that, they're going to re-sign him. And his play, just like Taron Johnson's play, is even Ed Oliver to an extent. These guys are stepping up the evolution of these players. They're taking the next step. You cannot understate the importance of how well this organization develops talent, and they resign them, and everybody just wants to win. So hats off to Tremaine Edmunds, and don't forget his counterpart Klein. He played well. They didn't ask him to do too much, so way to go for that second level.
Do we actually know that Tremaine Edmunds is going to be here long term? Like, just saying. But anyway, I just want to say that he is definitely noticeably taking a better step in coverage. And as I alluded to on Twitter many times, that is really where the value is added at the linebacker position. It's not a super valuable position. As you see, Kansas City won a Super Bowl running with one linebacker, but in Tremaine Edmunds' case, last night the Bills played 54% cover two. Cover two, that middle linebacker has to get proper depth to get under those cross routes, those post routes, those deeper routes. You have to get it. So essentially, it's like a Tampa 2. So they show one play on TV where he got under one of those routes, and he had actually altered Mahomes' throw due to the fact he was where he was supposed to be in coverage, and that's been his biggest thing. The past couple of years, he's just really like never in the right spots. Either he's missed tackles or whatever, but he's been one of the worst coverage linebackers, in the NFL since he's came in. But you're seeing that progression now, more comfortable in his system, smarter instincts are getting better. So he's making more plays out there. And therefore, as Travis alluded to, his price tag is going to go up, up, and up. And so the Buffalo is probably going to be looking at paying him somewhere around what Fred Warner or what Darius Leonard is going to get. Do I personally think he deserves that? No, but it's what the market dictates. And I don't want to poo-poo. I want to just say he definitely played great. He's been playing great the last 3 weeks, and he was a big reason why they beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
There, no disagreement there whatsoever, DJ. I think what the Bills have in Tremaine Edmonds, obviously it's been frustrating how long it has taken to really kind of see his talent and his potential come to fruition, given his draft status, given where he was drafted, what he was drafted to be, and the Bills that a lot of Bills fans were sold on from what Tremaine Edmonds would be. And the matter of fact is, you can say everything you will about the previous 3 years and what he's been able to do and his deficiencies. They're existent. They're not made up. They're not pulled from thin air. That is true factual information on Tremaine Edmonds and what he has been to this point. But the matter of fact is, the last 4 or 5 games for Tremaine Edmonds, those have been some of his best games on film to his career to this point. And when you see a guy ascending upward, ascending in his confidence and trusting his eyes and trusting the players in front of him, I think that was really one of the biggest things that really kind of hindered his development last season, was not having Star Lotulelei up front, which, I mean, we could sit here and argue until we're blue in the face as to why they did not address one technique defensive tackle after Star Lotulelei had opted out. I don't know why. I don't know why they cut a player like Vincent Taylor, who played a role in Cleveland last year as a one technique defensive tackle, who was the other one technique defensive tackle on the roster when Star Lotulelei had opted out. I don't know why that wasn't really a focus for the Bills front office or their staff collectively to get a one technique defensive tackle last year. But I really think that was what Tremaine Edmonds was missing. Missing that hurt him just as much as it hurt Ed Oliver, but I think more so him because of how further along he was in his career and it was really meant to come together for him last year from our perspective. It was really meant for him to kind of show the things he's shown this year from our perspective. And really, the fact that those things have come later rather than sooner, that is what it is. But the matter of fact is he's playing some damn good football right now, and he has a lot to do. Well, he has a lot of credit to go his way as to how the Bills defense has played and what they've been able to do to this point. This is a 3-phase football game. We can't get off this show without talking about the play made on special teams last night, right? We can't get out of here without talking about Siran Neal flying down the field and forcing a fumble. I believe it was after the Bills' opening scoring touchdown drive. The Bills weren't able to get a touchdown in response to this forced fumble, but they were able to get a field goal. Guys, week after week, we've seen the Bills special teams unit make plays. We've seen them make difference throughout the course of a football game when the Bills are turning possession over to the other team. This special teams unit, Tywan Jones, Siran Neal, these players make a difference every single week. Travis, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty indicative when they had 3 guys over on Siran Neal when he's playing gunner on a punt. Enough can't be said to how this team values special team players such as Neal, Jones, Metakevich, Ferguson. The list goes on and on. Their coverage units are great. I thought the kickoff was not its best, although they forced that fumble. Their punt unit is just, I mean, outside of the punter, I'm not super happy about the punting, but we'll save that for Dick Duran. But their coverage is great. The one thing that I wanted to touch on was I'm a huge Isaiah McKenzie fan, but I have to admit I'm kind of over this experiment. The only thing I want to see out of a kickoff or a punt return is making sure that we retain possession, especially when we have such a explosive offense, and to see him muff that kickoff in the rain, that one kickoff in Washington. I'm not comfortable when he's back there. I know he can make the big play, but my patience is definitely wearing thin in that regards. But overall, outside of the punting, and Tyler Bass kicking it out of bounds again, that's just inexcusable in my opinion.
you got to keep it a buck, Trav. You can't sit here and just give credit to the football team when the credit's not applicable, right? You're absolutely on point with the fact that the kickoff has to stay in bounds. And I agree with you. I am not comfortable with Isaiah McKenzie returning kicks. I haven't been comfortable with Isaiah McKenzie returning kicks ever since he was at Georgia. But that is the returner for the time being until they shuffle somebody else in there. But EJ, what were your thoughts on how the Bills special teams were able to kind of make a difference in this game? What do you think about Saran Neal and Tywan Jones at this point, and what that unit really means for this football team?
Well, you always want to try to steal some type of possession or shift some type of momentum or get some type of field position, from special teams. And the Bills seem to always be able to do that, and they did that in this game. They took a possession away and stole a possession. But it seems like time and time again, the Bills just always come up with one special teams play, that can shift, the momentum of the games. Consequently, the first game they lost because of special teams, essentially to the Pittsburgh Steelers when they got that block punt for a touchdown. But it's nice to see that the Bills came back. Saran Neal came and caused the hit, to jar that fumble loose. But the special teams unit always, like I said, seems to come up with a play, when they need it most. And I just want to say one thing, because the special teams forced that play and they got the ball back for Josh Allen, they actually did not score on that next drive because, and this is the only thing that I'll say, the only thing I'll nitpick at Josh Allen's performance, and Chris Collinsworth said it on the broadcast, he has got to stop taking those sacks when they're in scoring position and knocking them out of field goal range. That's why they didn't score, because he took that sack and they knocked them out of field goal range. Subsequently, they had to punt. So he has to help his special teams unit out after they stole a possession from Kansas City. I don't know how many more times you're gonna get away with that, but if there's one thing that I'll nitpick about Josh Allen's near perfect performance, that will probably literally be the only thing I'll say.
That's not nitpicking at all. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Thanks for correcting me, EJ. They didn't score on that possession, and because of the one thing
and the hold on Dawkins too, because
Yep.
Moss had a big run, got him down to the 8. But you're right, you can't take that grounding call there.
And that's one thing I had said on the offseason. I said that was the one thing that was keeping him back from being a top 5 elite quarterback, because he does that in big games. This is a big game. Now, I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if you're going to get away with that playing in Tampa Bay, playing Carolina. I don't know if you're going to get away with that next time, but they got away with it this time. But I mean, he consistently does it. And that's what I told Joe Miller. It's the constantly doing that. And Chris Collinsworth said he has got to stop doing that. And so in these bigger games, he got to be more aware of where he is on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you would have thought he almost broke his wrist how hard he smacked the turf after that play. I think it was evident he knew he made a mistake in that situation, and he's made that mistake countless times in the past. That is something that was really the one thing that I think I highlighted going into the offseason about Josh Allen, and something that really needs to kind of make itself scarce in his game was those plays where there's just a collection of mistakes, not throwing the ball away, evading into pressure being allowed, holding onto the ball too long, running around in circles, trying to play hero ball. And I mean, how many times have we seen that work to the Bills' favor? I mean, there was a couple of occasions last night where, that turned into a couple of the biggest plays that we saw from this offense. His escapability, his ability to evade pressure and make improv plays. That is, that aspect of Josh Allen's game, I hope, goes nowhere. But just being able to kind of monitor it, being able to just hold himself back in some of those situations and pick his spots, if you will. I think that needs to be absolutely done. I think that something needs to be done about those plays, because like you said, EJ, you're going to get away with that this week, but you may not be able to get away with it against some of these other tougher opponents that fall down the line. And yeah. But no, this was an incredible game for the Bills. I'm interested to hear who you guys have to give your game balls to. I know who I'm giving it to. I hope nobody gives them the game ball before I do, but I have a backup plan just in case. EJ, I'm starting with you. Who's your game ball going to?
Game ball number 1 is going to Josh Allen. Obviously, when you go 4 for 4 on 30+ yard throws, and you're pretty much perfect, taking advantage of the deep parts of the field, I don't know how you can't get a game ball. And I'm going to get a game ball to the whole defense, because they play lights out. Honestly, I can't tell you which which unit is the best on the team because they both playing, number one type ball. I think the defense is close to number one, I believe. And the offense is definitely averaging 34 points a game, which is best in the league right now. So game balls for me, defense, and Josh Allen.
Travis?
Well, my game ball goes to Leslie Frazier. It kind of is a cop out because, you gave it to the whole defense, but I thought the game plan and, obviously you got to execute, but these coaches are they're doing more than just calling plays. They're involved with the defense every minutia, every step of the way from Monday to Sunday. So Leslie Frazier, who was in a little bit of hot water a couple of years ago, when everyone was worried about McDermott taking over the play calling, and then last year the regression, he's been phenomenal. I think his game plan for every single game, including week 1, has been on point, and he's gotten his players to execute at an elite level. But if I have to go with an individual player, I'll move to offense. Emmanuel Sanders, 2 touchdowns. The route running, the savviness, and he's just smooth out there. Smoke was fast, but Sanders is smooth.
Yeah, absolutely, Trav. What were we saying?
No, I was just about to say that's a wide receiver adage, Trav. Smooth is fast.
Smooth is fast. So my game ball is going to Group. My game ball is going to the Bills rookie who had an interception last night, who had a sack last night. And on that sack, that was such a hustle play. I don't think we can talk about that play enough, where he chases Mahomes out of the pocket to his edge mate's side, Carlos Basham, and Carlos Basham did a hell of a job containing him. And then where's Greg Rousseau? Oh, right back there containing Mahomes, and he got there for the sack, and he made that huge play on that RPO, like EJ had alluded to. That was an absolute monster of a play. It was talked about countless times about how he was a receiver and coming out of high school and his athleticism and what have you. I don't think we can say enough about Groot. And to be a rookie defensive end and have a sack, have an interception in the first game. Well, I did a lot of research for the Bills last night, and just the history of the team, and I made it back pretty far. I don't think I found a single player in the Bills' history that they had that was a rookie on the defensive line that had an interception and a sack in the same game. Not enough can be said about Groot. He currently leads the team in sacks. He has been a factor when he was really kind of billed as a project, and I think he's done nothing but walk into one Bills drive and have the mentality of that of a sponge. Coming in there and learning something new every day, taking what there is to take from veterans such as Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison. Well, you got something to say, Trav?
I just wanted to say his run defense is A1. That dude, he gets his hands on you, and you're not going anywhere. It's amazing that.
You're right. That's a lot of what he did at college too. That one play where he stood up the lineman and got his arm out and got Clyde Edwards-Helaire for a tackle for loss. That's exactly what he used to do at Miami.
They stopped running at him.
Yeah, he really is that good. And I brought up the RPO play because during the week on ESPN they were literally talking about how you defend the RPO. The Kansas City runs the most RPOs in the past 3 years, and so I'm sitting here like, why would they even dare try to throw an RPO to his side? I thought they would see this on film, see this 6'7" behemoth who when he puts his arms up probably has the longest wingspan in the league, and they still tried to throw it anyway. And what did he do? He picked it off. Like that's what they get for being so cocky and throwing it to his side. I don't care if he's a rookie or not. It's the fact that he can just affect passes strictly by his length alone. And they still would have had the cockiness to still try to throw it anyway. And that's what they get. And they got it picked off.
I'm going to plant my flag right here. I think the Bills found a franchise edge rusher in Greg Rousseau. Sure. I think he is that dude. He is that dude for this defense, and he is going to be that dude for this defense on that front for years to come. And I think he is a freak of an athlete. He is a freak of a football player. He's a freak of a matchup. Imagine going out there trying to block that guy. He's faster than you. He's bigger than you. He's longer than you. His hands are probably about twice the size of your face. It's just, he is a mammoth of a man. He is one hell of a football player, and I think he has one hell of a future here in Buffalo. Guys, it's been a long show. We've stuck around for an hour and a quarter. It's been fun. I appreciate everybody staying here for as long as they have, viewing this show. it's been a lot of fun. And last night was a really fun game to watch. It's a really fun game to be a part of for Bills Mafia and everybody who has something to say or think about it. Any parting words, EJ?
I just want to say that Buffalo's competition is getting ready to get really stiff. They got Tampa Bay, they got Carolina coming up, not really so much Tennessee, and then they're gonna have the Chargers, week 13, I believe. So we will honestly get a really good gauge as to what type of Buffalo team we will see going forward, into this season. And now we're gonna look, as I mentioned before, we're gonna look and see how Josh Allen and the Bills offense take advantage of not having only two deep options, but now having a third with Dawson Knox, and see how they use him to take advantage of those deeper parts of the field.
Yeah, Travis?
Yeah. I mentioned on Friday that ever since Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane came in, there was a methodical approach to how things got done. The first season, it was kind of fluky getting in the playoffs, but they knew they had to get rid of a lot of the dead cap. They had to get people who bought into the process. Then they made the playoffs, and they won a couple playoff games. And now this year was all about beating the Chiefs. And here we are after a 38-20 victory. It's just great. It's comforting to know that this team has a plan and they execute. And, the sky's the limits. I mean, last year we were talking about Super Bowl or bust. I mean, really, you hate to say it week 5, but I mean, the aspirations for this team are sky high, and they just need to stay healthy and continue what they're doing. And, Tennessee, we're on week 2 of our revenge tour, and I don't foresee a different outcome. Maybe even a little bit bigger point differential, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. I really do. You kind of touched on it there, Travis. Really kind of just the Super Bowl or bust mentality. And I think that's the mentality that's not only in that locker room, but needs to be instilled in this fan base. This is the team to beat right now, folks. There is nobody out there aside from maybe the Cardinals, and that's a firm maybe. Maybe the Cardinals that's playing just as good a football in all 3 phases as the Buffalo Bills. Find somebody, please. Go out there, watch every team's 5 games. That's not necessarily a challenge. That's just me speaking with the confidence that there is not another team in the league playing as good a ball as the Buffalo Bills right now. You talk about what that week 1 loss meant to this team, the kind of fire it ignited underneath them, if you will. It's really kind of carrying. I wouldn't say it's carrying them to this point, but I saw a different football team last night. I saw a football team that went out there and they weren't ready to just beat the Chiefs. They were ready to beat anybody that it was across from them. And I can tell you this much is that if the Bills walk out there with that mentality that they had last night when approaching the Kansas City Chiefs, then they can walk out there and beat anybody. It doesn't matter if it's Tampa, Carolina. It does not matter whoever it is on their schedule that they have in front of them. I don't think there's a game that the Bills can't win at this point. I don't think there's a matchup that the Bills can't take advantage of at this point. And it's a scary thought in mind when you talk about what Josh Allen's able to do with the football, only just the ascension of it appears to be everybody on this football team from left to right, from front to back. These players continue to get better. They continue to ooze confidence. They continue to play physical. They continue to play the way the game is meant to be played. And I think that is so important, and they do nothing but say the right things. If there isn't a Super Bowl team out, if we've gone back and looked at Super Bowl teams from the past, when they have gone 5 weeks into a season, when you look at what their demeanor is, when you look at how they approach the game, how they handle themselves, whether it's on the field or off the field, I think that you could draw a lot of parallels to how this Bills team is and what their real road ahead of them really has, and what really lies ahead for this football team. It's exciting, and I think every Bills fan out there has a right to be as excited as they want to be about this football team, because what's there to not be excited about? That was a really fun game last night. This has been a really fun show. EJ, Travis, you can find both of these guys and their Twitter handles in the description below. You want to follow them. You want to know what they have coming up. Travis has the Friday night forecast coming up. EJ is always willing to talk to fans, always willing to conversate, discuss. Don't argue. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a discussion, not an argument. Right, EJ?
Yes, sir. No arguing. Just want everyone to learn football. That's what we're all on Twitter for, to further our knowledge of football. And that's what
I
I'm
love
on Twitter
football.
for. Right.
Who doesn't love football?
Exactly.
Love football. If you want to find both these gentlemen and everything they have coming forward for the Cold Front Report, go in the links below, find their link, click on their link, follow them on Twitter. You'll know what they have coming forward. And if you'd like to find me, you can do the exact same at CFR Clayton. I have the link in the description below. Be sure to follow the Cold Front Report on Instagram at Cold Front Report _ Bills News and on Twitter at Cold Front Report. Like the show, subscribe on YouTube, follow our Facebook page. That's Buffalo Bills Cold Front Report for news and updates all throughout the week, all the content to engage with the Bills Mafia the way they want to be engaged with. It's nothing but fun here at the Cold Front Report. Guys, it's been fun. It's been real. It's been a really good show. It's been a long show. And I can say nothing but positive words about these guys for giving me their time, and all the viewers thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with us this long. Stay healthy, stay safe, and go Bills.